right, I would like to call this Monday, October 23rd, school committee business meeting to order. Oh my goodness, it's not Mrs. Yell. Ms. Manning, can you take the roll, please?
Mr. Cole?
Here.
Mr. Callahan?
Here.
Ms. Ball?
Here.
Mayor Reardon?
Here.
Mr. Menon?
Here.
Ms. Walker?
All right, can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Please?
Okay.
Oh, and Brianna Higgins is here.
Higgins also here.
You're under my tape. Brianna, she's here. I marked you.
All right, let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Vice Chair Hall.
Thank you. No one signed in for public comment. Any last-minute comments this evening? Okay, then we're going to move on to our recognitions. That's why you're all here.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. Thank you all for attending tonight. Part of our school committee meetings in the beginning, we like to recognize students and staff throughout the district. And tonight is some extraordinary students that will be recognizing tonight throughout the district that had a perfect score in one of the MCAS tests. So first of all, I think you all deserve a round of applause for our... And I think it just shows the dedication and commitment, not only for our students, but for the families, because anytime you can achieve perfection, you should take a moment and kind of reflect on that and really celebrate that. So we're really proud of our students that are out there. And after our recognition for you all, we'll take a short recess, and then we'll also, for the rest of the night, you could stay for the MCAS presentation for a couple hours, so it's up to you. But with no further ado, I'm going to read down the names, and so I'd like to have, I see our principals out back, Ms. Rossi, Mr. Marcos, and Mr. Wolf. Why don't you all come on up? Ms. Sokolowski, you can come on up too, if you want. We're inclusive.
Put my hand up there. I'll just grab it. Okay.
Because we have some students there.
Sure, okay.
All right, so for the first round, for perfect score in ELA, English Language Arts, yeah, you might be right, might be easier. This student is not here. There we go, we're off to a good start. I'll read the students who are on here at the end, but I want to recognize the students that are here right now. So we'll go down to grade 8 for ELA, and we have Madison Butler. Come on up. And for parents, this is, congratulations. Very proud of you. Mr. Marcos, you want to come on over? So what we typically do is at the end, we'll do like a team photo, but because there's so many great students, so we'll do individual photos. So parents, grandparents, if you want to come on up. There you go. Once you get in the middle. Yeah. You just gonna stand in the middle. Look at your mom. Never do this. And the yes behind me. There you go. All right. Congratulations. It's all right. As superintendent, I have a pass. I've raised 2 daughters. They're 2 years apart, so which means middle school ages. I fully understand. They will love you when they're in their 20s. That's what I've experienced. All right. So congratulations. We're extremely proud of you. Our next grade 8 student for a perfect score in ELA is Colin Curran. and parents, if you want to come on up. It's a good photo op. All right. All right, congratulations. Our next grade 8 student for a perfect score in English Language Arts, Logan McKnight. Congratulations. All right. All right, now we're on grade 7. Perfect score for ELA, Quinlan Fenn.
This is like the waiting room at J.C. Penney's photo portraits.
All right, grade 7, perfect score ELA, Abigail Moriarty.
Good job, Eric.
All right, continue with grade 7, perfect score in ELA, Audrey Robach.
All right, good job, Eric.
All right, now we're on grade 5. Perfect score in ELA, Soraya Bovare. Congratulations, great job. Soraya.
I'm missing
Congratulations. All right, grade 4, perfect score in ELA, Noah Ducher.
Congratulations.
All right, good job.
Congratulations. Congratulations to our ELA students. And now we're going to be perfect score in math. Even though he's not here, but our school committee chair's son, Andrew. What's your last name? Oh yeah, Andrew Hall. Andrew Hall. He's actually at Sailboat tonight.
He is actually.
Yeah. People, it's our robotic team that competes against some of the top colleges in the nation, and we've won 2 years in a row. So, future looks bright. All right. For math, grade 8. Thank you, Steve. Grade 8, perfect score in math. Calvin Eaton. All right, perfect score in math, grade 8, Maxwell Macaron.
Good job.
All right, perfect score, grade 8, Noah Tarkin.
Good job. All right, good job.
All right.
Good job.
All right, now we're on to science. And this is high school, grade 10. That's on here, so we'll put in there. Grade 10 science, Madeline Jackman. Perfect score.
Good job.
Professional collaboration.
All right.
It's good to see the school committee and the superintendent
Yeah.
getting along so well.
Evaluation. All right, here we go. Grade 10. Once again, another perfect score in science and biology, John Murray.
Good job. Thank you.
Perfect.
Perfect score, science biology, Charlotte Zeller.
All right, good job. All right.
All right, perfect score, science biology, Parker Harding. All right, perfect score, science biology, Sophia LaFranchise.
Great job.
This is easy.
Perfect score, science biology, grade 10, Molly Smith. Good job. Okay.
That's all of them.
That's it?
That's absent.
Yep. All right, just as I said, I'll just read the names of the students who are not here that also got a perfect score. In grade 10 ELA, Alexandra Hilger. This is right here. Grade 10 Science, Beck Andrew Lunas. Grade 10 Science, Kyle Zigalowskis. There you go. Well, I'll pronounce this correctly in the May, I'll work on it for the, not May, November meeting. Perfect score for science, biology, Molly Grant. And then once again, perfect score for science and biology, Mr. Andrew Hall. There you go. All right, I think we'll take a 5-minute recess so our school committee members can say hi to the folks and the students. So thank you all very much. Thank you for your patience. I didn't, it's a great idea. We have so many kids scoring perfect scores. We'll have to rent out an auditorium. Thank you all.
Thank you.
So at this time, I would like to recognize Kyle Hildebrand. Come on up. Mr. Marcos, why don't you come on up? Awesome. So, as we said, a lot of our faculty go beyond the call of duty. And Kyle's been in the middle school for many years. And we're going to talk about the importance of teacher leadership that we've developed throughout the district. And Kyle has stepped up as one of the teacher leaders at the middle school. He's been instrumental in a lot of the planning that Mr. Marcos has done. He goes above the call of duty for all of the students on a daily basis. So when we asked our principals for staff members to be recognized, Mr. Marcos just said that Kyle is the ideal teacher leader, the ideal professional, and one of the most caring people that he's worked with in his tenure. I see Kyle there late after school, day in and day out, and I just want to also take a moment and thank you for your dedication and commitment. So congratulations, Kyle Hildebrand. Come on.
Appreciate that. Thank you. All right.
Should I just stay up here for the...
If you want.
Do you have any more recognitions, or?
That is it.
Okay.
Yes.
He doesn't recognize anybody anymore.
So for the consent agenda, Mr. Callahan, did we get the warrants?
We do have the warrants. Would you like me to read them?
Go for it.
I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate $886,132.06 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Theo, it's time for the student representative report.
Thank you very much, and good evening. Here are the latest updates from the Bresnahan, Molenbeek, and high schools. So students at the Bresnahan this week now have a new game to play at recess with the opening of a new Gaga Ball pit. This is a very accessible and simple game that all Bresnahan students now have access to. And I, along with the administration, would like to thank George Goich, an NHS student, for dedicating his time and resources to the construction of this for one of his Eagle Scout projects. In the science department, Mass Audubon visited third grade students as a part of the unit on animal adaptations. In particular, students learned about our local owl populations, their behaviors and adaptations, and even had a chance to dissect an owl pellet, no matter how gruesome that may sound.
That's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. There was also another owl opportunity at the Bresnahan with our kindergarten students who got the chance to experience live owls through the Windows on Wildlife program, and many thanks to the PTO for sponsoring this. In other news, the Bresnahan School had their dedicated safety week last week with a school-wide assembly and morning discussions about emotional safety and coping strategies. The goal of the program is to make the Bresnahan a safer place by working together on important emotions. Lastly, early literacy screening results will be sent home this week from the assessment held a few weeks ago. Students at the Bresnahan are tested per Massachusetts State Regulation 603 CMR 28.031F. I hope I'm reading that correctly, which requires all public schools to assess the reading skills of students in grades K through 3 at least twice a year. The data from this screening will be used to determine each individual student's risk for reading difficulty and to provide a guide as to how to provide intervention and support. We'll now move on to the Molen. The Similarity Awareness Program will return to the Molen this year. The Molen will conduct various activities and discussions at first to get students thinking about the similarities that everyone shares, including those with disabilities. Northeast Passage, a nonprofit from Durham, New Hampshire, is bringing in wheelchairs and accessories to teach the students about how impaired students can still be included in sports or games. Fourth grade students will have quite the experience this week with exotic and unique animals from the Curious Creatures organization. Their professional exhibitors will teach respect and appreciation for these animals through a variety of hands-on presentations, which include interesting facts about the animals and their habitats. This past Friday, the PTO hosted the annual Mullen Pasta Night and Clipper Pride Rally. Families with younger students went to the Mullen cafeteria for pasta, desserts, and games before heading to the high school to cheer on the football team. And lastly, the Mullen School Adjustment counselors, Mullen School Adjustment counselors, Maggie Flaherty and Siobhan Green, are running 2 awareness campaigns this month. The first is the Bullying Prevention Unit, being taught to all 4th and 5th graders. There are 4 lessons assigned to each student, along with a virtual classroom with resources for students and educators. Ms. Flaherty and Ms. Green have also posted a virtual classroom created by the Learning Nest to raise awareness about dyslexia in our schools. At the Knock Middle School, students have begun to prepare for their own student-led conversations. Students and advisors are working together to gather information such as academic grades, iReady baseline data, and MCAS scores to support these conversations. Students are using their advisory time to build their own story around this data, as well as how they personally think their year has gone so far. The 7th grade field trip program has also begun. Students visited Maudsley State Park for a science scavenger hunt, went kayaking in the Merrimack River, and ventured down to Sandy Point Reservation to test water salinity levels. Lastly, 45 Knox students attended a 2-hour leadership summit led by J.C. Pohl from the Teen Truth organization. At this meeting, students discussed the challenges that they face both in and out of school, and the possible solutions they could use to develop an action plan. Finally, we have some news from NHS. Athletic teams have continued to excel in the fall season, and a big congratulations to all of our athletes, coaches, trainer, and athletic director on earning yet another Dalton Award this year. The Dalton Award recognizes athletic programs with the largest winning percentage across all sports in a school year, and this is the 3rd year that our high school has won this award. Speaking of athletics, I'd like to congratulate our own NHS football team for their 42-0 victory at last Friday's homecoming game. Over half of the school participated in both the game and the dance afterward. And lastly, I would like to recognize all of the seniors who are a part of Mr. LaChapelle and Mr. Hill's civics classes. Over the past few weeks, they have organized a sophisticated forum for Newburyport City Council and school committee candidates. And of course, thank you to all of the candidates for their willingness to participate in these activities. That is all from me this evening. I'll now turn it back over to you, Mrs. Hall.
Thank you, Theo. All right, it's time for the MCAS presentation.
All right.
You ready?
I think I am.
Sean, we don't have the printed copies of this, though.
What's that?
We don't have printed copies. Everyone wanted a printed copy.
We
don't
have
have
it.
printed.
There is one.
Well, that's why, see, just in case. We don't know what Mr. Callahan we're getting, so. We're always ready. Also, I'll ask our principals once again to come on up. They'll be here as we go through the presentation to facilitate and to talk at the end. What I'd like to do is kind of give the overview of this data report, not only for our school committee, but for the people that are watching. There you go. Yeah, I mean, that's right. And then at the end of our presentation, I have our principals that will be up here to answer any further questions as we go through. So, from talking from our retreat this summer and talking about slideshows and how to present, different data, so we really took the feedback, I think, from school committee and really have taken our data report and really just from start to finish for parents, for guardians, for family members, for community members, to really, I think it can be overwhelming to look at a lot of this data, but really try to break it down so people can make sense of it. So hopefully after tonight, reading from start to finish, people have a better general understanding of the MCAS testing and the standardized testing that all Massachusetts students go through throughout the school year. So As we move along with this data report, as you can see, tester requirements that's in the left, that kind of just shows all of the different students throughout the school year and what different tests that they're going to be taking. So you can see, I won't read you all of that, but from grades 3 to 8, ELA and math, and then science is grades 5 and 8, and then students in biology, grade 9. In grade 9, you should take the biology. So that is the testing requirements for all students in the Commonwealth. The other piece that all parents have received is right here. Those are the data reports that not only do the students get the scores, but also there's information for parents, how to read those scores. So on the other side, underneath where it says, what does the district look at when we're examining MCAS scores? So this is kind of the preview of the entire packet. So we have school district performance data that we measured for our accountability. Then there's student growth data that we look at. And then the student achievement data is measured by percentage of students moving towards and meeting expectations. And then the last piece is subgroup data, special education, low income, and L students. So all that information is in here, and these are all the different data points that we all look at. One, as a district level, which is a bigger view, and then two, at the school level is with principals over here and with their teams where they do a deeper dive individual for every student. So as we scroll up, so basically what are some of the data trends overall that we saw? So we've made progress, I think, in every area, and when we go through this data packet, you'll see the different areas that we're going to celebrate. And at the same time, there are other, areas of focus and areas of growth. And I'll provide some more details as we move through this data presentation. So on the left-hand side, so the areas of strength at the high school, the middle school, and the elementary. As I said, overall, we're happy with the progress that we've made, and then some areas of growth, as you can see, the different areas that we're looking to focus on. And at the end of the presentation, our building principals can, talk a little bit more detail on some of the, if there's questions around those different areas, they can follow up. So I think when we're talking about what actions are we taking, and I think you're going to see this also for the people that enjoy the budget process, you're going to see a lot of our initiatives, a lot of our strategic goals that are not only tied to closing the achievement gap for all students, but also stretching our students in academic ways. So the first thing is when we're looking at the goals of the district over here, so obviously we increase achievement for all students. So as we said, we're addressing students that are meeting the academic progress that we anticipate, but at the same time, what are we doing for the students that are already at the academic progress? How are we stretching them, and are we giving them opportunities to learn more? We're strengthening the areas of the lower growth areas, and then also decreasing the achievement gaps. So those are the overarching goals for the district, and then area one is the focused intervention. So throughout the last year and this year, we've talked about our iReady programs. We've talked about an investment of research-based program and curriculum. We've also, part of our budgets, we've talked about interventions at every school. We talked about interventionists. And then the other piece that's really important for us is working with our faculty in professional development, like targeted professional development. So the other piece that Deb O'Connor presented is our special education program and development there. Other focused intervention is our after-school programming throughout the district that's focused on the interventions. Our vacation time for the April and February vacation, where we had academic programming going on for our students. and then also the accelerated, both intervention camps over the summer and then accelerated summer academy. As the next area that focused to support our goals is the curriculum and instruction. So part of the different presentations that you heard throughout the years, we have our vertical data team, we have school-based data teams, and then what's also been really beneficial for all of us is the development of our teacher leadership. So under the curriculum and instruction, the investment in iReady Math, foundations, literacy programs, MyView, and then, as we said before, the ongoing professional development for our teachers. And remember, you can provide, and this is why I want to credit our staff, districts can provide professional development, but it's sometimes up to the teachers to be motivated. And as Deb O'Connor talked about, Orton Gillingham training for our special education department, this summer we had over 200 teachers participating in professional development. So we're offering a lot of professional development opportunities, but we have a staff that's very interested in taking that, very interested in finding out best practice and then implementing it, along with the, I guess, PD that we've done for technology, is what you see, and I'm learning myself here with the iPad. And then the last piece is staff and budget. That's the last area. So the investments, as we said, with our curriculum, investments in district teacher leadership roles and curriculum work throughout the school district, and then also the investment in personnel to support an implementation of intervention models to support all students. So I also think it's very important as we look at data and we look at percentages and we look at subgroups, behind every single data point there's a person behind there. There's a student behind there. There's a family behind there. So when we look at our data and we're looking at, from MCAS data, iReady data, any data point we're looking at, our teachers and our principals really look at it as an individual data case. For example, we look for other aspects of data from not only the academic side, but classroom participation, achievements, some of the social emotional program we have in place. So it's really taking a look at the whole child, and then that's where we base our intervention programming on, either academic intervention or mental health support for some of our students. So the first aspect here is school accountability data. So when we're looking at school accountability, the state really looks at these different areas. So the first piece obviously is achievement in ELA, math, science, technology. They also look at growth in ELA and math. And then they also look at English proficiency. So that's for our L students, for the students' first language is not English. And then, as we talked even before the pandemic, chronic absenteeism is a new data point, and student attendance is really important. The other indicated factors is our four-year cohort graduation rate at the high school, extended engagement rate, which is the attendance and success at the secondary, post-secondary level and college level. A look at the annual dropout rate, and then advanced coursework completion, courses defined by DESE. So if we look at Newburyport Public Schools accountability percentiles, so what we did is taking a look at 2019 of where we were as a district, and then looking at it 2023. So pre-COVID to post-COVID, you can see with our accountability percentiles, we're in pretty good shape. That's why I think when we look at building upon the foundation, or we look at building upon progress, these are some of the areas that we're talking about. If you skip down below to where the advanced coursework is, this is something that every year, I think we're creating more and more opportunities for our students district-wide when we talk about the summer academy, little courses like that. But at the high school level, we're really looking at the increase of dual enrollment, the increase in opportunities for AP courses, and all of that type of extended learning. So you can see from 2019 over here to 2023, that's just our advanced placement coursework. And the state does not, it only looks at juniors and seniors for AP coursework. Mr. Wolf and his guidance team have also provided more opportunities for AP work for sophomores that would not be counted by the state. And then remember, our dual enrollment, we're allowing freshmen all the way to seniors to participate in the dual enrollment. So dual enrollment is the opportunity to acquire college and high school credit at the same time, with the ultimate goal where we had one graduating senior this year that graduated with a high school diploma and an associate's degree. Ultimately, the big vision is to have more and more high school students to leave Newburyport High School with both associate's degree and high school diploma. And when we can add more of that dual enrollment opportunities, it's an easier goal to attain. Okay? And this is a lot of detail in here, so I'm just kind of giving the overview, and I'm not, going to read all of this to you all, but I'm just kind of giving the overview here. So as we look at the next aspect of this, it's attendance. And if you recall, during the pandemic, DESE raised the allowable attendance up to 20%. So basically, that was 36 days missed. And if you recall, there was the quarantine rules for students and staff that acquired COVID-19. So from there, DESE has returned, or we've returned to the 10% measurement, which is 18 days, considered chronically absent. So when we look at this, and you look at the state data, we're below that state data percentages, but we're still not, this is an area that we're working with and that we're focused on. As you can see, we're above the 10% overall in these different grades in these different schools. So we're paying more attention to that. And once again, these are individual students, individual families that we're working with. The next area is high school graduation, extended engagement, and dropout rates. We just kind of talked through that a little bit, and as I said, later on afterwards, if there's more questions on Mr. Wolf will be able to answer. But our graduation rate is percentage of students in a cohort graduate within 4 years or less. The engagement rate ties in to the college also rate at the college level once they leave. That's a new data point that the state is kind of looking at. We talk about college and career readiness. So our students, are they successful in college? And then the dropout rate. So on this, there's a slight increase in the dropout rate. I think it's at 1%, which is a little bit higher than it was in 22. But once again, we're working with those families, and there's some specific aspects of some of those students. So also part of Mr. Wolf's team is students that do drop out, and then he has reached out to them to bring them back in. So every January, we send out a letter to those families to reconsider coming back and or work with the guidance department and possibly attend a community college. So the next area is the student growth. And I think if you look on the left-hand side, this is the categories for student growth. So you have very high, you have high, typical, low, and very low. So basically, student growth is between, you want to see between 40 and 60% overall. And so there are aspects of this chart as you're looking at student growth. In math, for example, if we look at the areas grade 4 math and grade 8 math, these are a couple areas that our principal and their teams are working on and taking a look at. Remember, this is also another reason why we purchased some research-based curriculum in math and provided professional development for our teachers in those grades. But that's one area of growth that we're looking at as a district. And then, once again, there's different stories behind that. The other piece that we also look at on the positive side is you can see the growth rates from grades 5 throughout grade 7. And we also want to celebrate, grade 7 growth overall. And Mr. Marcos is working with his teachers, and he has some plans, and he can probably speak a little bit more to that. The other piece, too, is, and just to kind of give a student growth example, so if we take an individual student and they scored 500, let's say, on their, let's say, MCAS, we'll say math, for example, is a 500 score. So that individual student is going to be compared with all the other students in the state that scored 500. So then the following year, how much growth did they show? So if that cohort of students within the Commonwealth, let's say, went to 520, so the anticipated growth rate would be 520 for that individual student, that would be the typical growth that they would expect. So for example, and this is why there's always two stories, data stories. So if we're working with a family, and let's say the growth of that one student from 7th grade to 8th grade was only at 510, but their cohort was at 520, that student would have low growth. So our teams know all of our students. So that, let's just take, for example, let's say that student was struggling with a family or a death in the family, missed some school. Our adjustment counselors were working with that individual student. So although they didn't grow as much as their cohort, that could be a success story with some of the personal adversity that that student and family were facing. So that would be like one scenario. Let's say we had another student that hit that same 510 mark. So then they look at that student not making effective growth. And then let's say that was just purely academic. There was no situation, personal situation or mental health situation for that student. Well, now the intervention is going to look a lot different, because if that's purely academic, and then that's when our teachers dig a little bit deeper and kind of, figure out what's going to be the best way of catching that student up. So that's really kind of covers our student growth, and then also grade 10 growth compared with our math and science is also there. I mean, our math and ELA. The next piece that's talked about a lot is the subgroups. What's a subgroup and kind of how does that all look? So overall, the aggregate is all students together. And then from there, a subgroup is a subgroup of students that share some identifying factors. So students with disabilities would be a subgroup, English learners would be a subgroup, and low-income students would be a subgroup throughout the state. And that's kind of how they define that. And then when we look at high-need students, so the high-need students is categorizing all three of those type of subgroups. So you can break down these subgroups as students with learning disabilities, you can look at Ls, you can look at low income, and then overall you can look at your high needs. So when we look at this is some, this data is also promising because they've made some gains here for their student growth. So students with disabilities, so we just showed some statistic overall of areas that, of focus overall, but areas of focus when we look at students with disabilities, you can see that they outperformed the aggregate when you break those subgroups out. So students with disabilities in math, and then students in high needs is off to the right. So you can still meet that threshold between that 40 and 60 of growth. As we said, it looks promising. It's a good foundation to continue to move forward, but there is some work to be done. So that's the subgroup breakdown for our school committee and the people that are watching. Our next, just some more data as we're looking at subgroups growth analysis, grades 3 to 8. And remember, we're looking at growth. You want to be between that 40 and 60 mark throughout. So this is our student percentile subgroup average, SGP. So with our ELA and our math overall. And then on the left side, we break it down just a little bit more. So there are 47 L students in grades 3 to 8. So on average, 7 to 10 of our L or former L students at each grade level. These are smaller subgroups, so they analyze more at the grade level. And then it's better for understanding individually of students and areas for growth for them. We wanted to highlight down the bottom, as we said, there's strengths and areas of focus. This for the middle school overall is an area of shows promise. So when we look at students with disabilities and the high need students throughout the middle school, grades 6, 7, and 8, you can see that when we talk about closing the achievement gap and some of those initiatives that we have, there is some good work being done here as those students in their growth percentiles was pretty positive. All right. And then this is kind of a quick little breakdown of kind of similar what I just talked about student achievement data. So exceeding expectations, meeting, partially meeting, and not meeting of those scores. And that's why when we're looking at the student achievement data, it's very similar to another data point that we look at. And what we wanted to show for this one is in Newburyport, as teachers are analyzing this data, we took a positive piece. So as teachers are analyzing this data, they would see this question, and 99% of the Newburyport fourth graders got it correctly. So if you're in a grade level team meeting and you're looking at these standards that were asked for this one question, that would say, to most of the teachers that we're doing a pretty good job covering this standard. On the flip side, if there was, let's say, less than 90 or 75% of a question that was answered correctly, so 25% of the students didn't answer it, or if it was 50%, well, now they go and they'll analyze that data, and then that's some of the bigger questions. So they'll take a look at those standards, they'll take a look at the curriculum, and are these, they'll ask those essential questions. Are these the type of standards? Are we missing something here? Do we need to add this more in the curriculum? So from the district level, there's data, but then you can continue to break it down. But remember, every student individually we work with all of those students individually. So there's always a name and a face behind all of these data points. So what we try to do here for school committee and also the general public is really to give a snapshot of some of the highlights of our MCAS scores. So when you look at grade 10, so you can just see the breakdown for the ELA, the math. So these are the percentages of student meeting or exceeding expectations. The ELA math achievement, percentage of students on the right-hand side, taking a look at last year to this year. And then the average student growth percentiles is also on here. So it gives each grade level and parents and guardians a snapshot of the overall grade. The other piece that we added below, and what I try to highlight here a little bit, or we try to highlight here as a team, is sometimes in a small district, such as Newburyport compared to larger districts of, Salem or Lynn or Beverly, where there's 5,000 or 6,000 students. So sometimes percentages, for example, people see that as a bigger number than it is. So we have on this, students with disabilities and high needs students, of the students that did not meet, and the students that are partially meeting. And that's why I think it's really important that for these individual students who are not meeting or partially meeting, these are the type of students that intervention is going to be provided for them. In this, as we said, there could be a lot of support, a lot of different reasons for students that aren't making the academic progress that we anticipate, but that's all of the support from there. So for each grade, we lay that out for everybody, similar to grade 8. And I won't read through all of this, but very similar. So every grade has a similar chart and easy to follow. So as the parents and the public can scroll through, what we really like about this is then they can go back. So if you go back to the original front page that we just talked about quickly, it's the same thing. So in this packet, we define what school district performance is measured. We define and show what student growth is. We show student achievement, and then we talk about and show and try to educate what subgroups are. So we really try to take all of this data, as I said, from start to finish, explain an overview of what the state's looking at and what all these, like, sometimes educational jargon and terms mean. But then for parents and guardians, they can go back and they can scroll through towards the end and kind of look at each grade level. That we'd really just try to break everything down. So on our part, I think we've done a pretty good job really providing a lot of detail, a lot of information that hopefully makes sense to people. But also, I think what the really important aspect of the MCAS testing is this right here. It's these individual student reports. It's the, this is a journey when you're in education, from the students when they're preschool all the way to grade 12. There's going to be ups and downs. But the individual student reports and the individual students and working with individual families, parents and guardians, and work with those families and adjust not only for the academic progress for the individual student, but ultimately for the physical and the mental health and the wellness for all students. So that's the report and just the overview. And then I have my crew over here, if you guys just want to come on up, just in case there's questions. So you don't have to walk back and forth. But there you go. All right, we'll open it up for questions. And I'm going to defer to the people behind me.
Ms. Walker?
Yeah, thank you. I guess my question is, from a sort of high level, here's the cliff notes for what each of us has taken away from the MCAS this year. I get that each individual student should be evaluated and considered and all that. Mm-hmm. But what are some of the key things that you as a team really want to work on? It looks like grade 8 math.
Yep.
So how does that, maybe 2 or 3, these are the things we take away from these results that we really think is important for our school and maybe a specific grade if that's the issue?
I think overall, I'm going to have them, each principal can probably talk towards it, but I think overall, achievement progress is pretty good. I think we're in a good place, as we said, foundationally to continue to move forward. And there's some different areas, I think overall as a district that I kind of highlighted, but I think I'll have, you want to start? All right.
Yeah, so at the high school, last year was a big year in terms of teachers developing common assessments in the core subject areas. And so this year is they're implementing those, but then they're also doing what's called a teaching and learning cycle. So where teams will get together and they'll review the assessment data from when they give them. But then the big question that they ask is, all right, for students that didn't perform well, is the now what question. So what are we doing in our classrooms to support and catch students up if they didn't perform well on the assessment? But then also the other piece, so that's a lot that teachers are doing, but then there's also kind of the school level component. And so one of the pieces with support from the school committee last year in terms of the budget process is for us to be able to hire tutors so that we can also do additional interventions outside of the classroom, but targeted to the assessment results on those common assessments that the teachers had administered in their classes. So that's what's happening at the high school level.
Do you see is there a specific grade or student component that you feel deserves extra attention based on these results, or are you getting more of a broad?
Well, I mean, I think a big piece from our data obviously is our high needs population. And then also we've had a large influx of English language learners who now, at this point of, being over a year at the high school, they're now held to our accountability results as well. So there's the language acquisition piece that we're working to accelerate. But then also at the same time, with some students that are part of our high needs, we've given them an extra academic support block that is really geared towards math and reading and writing. So that way that's a lot more strategic in terms of that focus. And then outside of that, also giving additional support for the science exam as well.
Mr. Marcos, but no, it's a great question. I think just as we're prepping for our budget, I think newcomers and L support is something that we're going to really need to focus on, because I do believe we'll have some newcomers coming in from other countries, and I think that's something also for the North Shore superintendents that you'll see an increase, probably of funding requests throughout the budget process. Mr. Marcos, you want to? Same question.
All right.
Yeah.
So I think from a macro standpoint, some of the things I take away, so I don't compare myself against some of the schools that DESE does. So just looking at some of the area schools that, typically in North Shore, looking at our accountability data, we grew the third most, looking at about 22 different schools in North Shore. And I don't want to name the districts, but some of the high-performing districts haven't grown in about a decade, to be quite honest, because their accountability is higher, but their accountability grows 1%. So for us to go from 54 to 66, I think shows that what we've been doing over the past 3 or 4 years. So that was kind of one big takeaway from the grand scheme of things. I think some other things that I look at from a macro standpoint is when you look at the accountability, you start beating your head against the wall. What's going on in 6th grade? What's going on in 7th grade? What's going on in 8th grade? Okay? And I will stand behind, I've said this numerous times here, and I will say it in front of my teachers, I stand behind the work that they're doing in the classrooms. They're phenomenal. But then having individual conversations with them around our accountability achievement data, what is going on there? So we've already dove deep into it from a macro standpoint, and now from a micro standpoint is, what's the standard? So now let's look at the standards that we're teaching, okay? What are the standards that we have not scored, well against the state? What are some of the standards that were in the red? And now let's go back to the curriculum mapping work that we've done the last 3 years and see where are some of those gaps. And then going to a micro level at the teacher level, it's now let's look at the lesson that we're teaching. When are we teaching it? Plays a big role. So I sat around with a group of 6, my math team, back in the early release in October, whatever that was. And they're fist bump, like, oh man, look at this geometry standard, we crushed it. Hey, give us some feedback. Why? Say, we teach geometry right before, MCAS, so it's like those went higher. Talking to my 8th grade team, some of those geometry standards were a little bit lower. We teach at the beginning of the year. So now we have to start to think about, we probably have to layer in a review prior to that to start to spiral that piece of the curriculum. And then it starts to dig deeper. So our November early release, we'll start to actually look at the micro, if that's even a word, now it is, to look at the item analysis. And let's start to look at the types of questions that our students got wrong.
Because sometimes the reality is some of those questions are confusing. And are we asking those questions the same way in our class? And are we exposing our students to those types of questions in our assessments? So again, I think from a macro standpoint, to look at it from the teacher perspective, that's what I'm thinking about. And then as far as our 7th to 8th grade transition, I mean, there's a really distinct story in math, and I'll just talk about that briefly. So I will never tell a student that, or a family that wants to put their child in algebra, I'll never say no. One of the things that I learned as becoming a principal, unless you say no and lift obstacles, you know, especially for students, we want to push that. I think it opens up the doors for AP classes. I think it opens the doors for dual enrollment. I think naturally just encourages students to take risks. And I think that's what middle school is all about. But then I'm like, okay, let's look at this data. So going back to, we had about 56 students take algebra last year. About 20 of those students qualify for algebra on their own, meeting the 3 criteria that we have, okay? So then we gotta look at the other, say, 35, okay, of students. So then so I dove deep into it. How many of those students met 2 of the 3 criteria? How many of those students met 1 of the criteria? And then which of those students chose to waive in? And the reality is once we send that letter home to say, hey, your child has the opportunity to waive in, then it's like, yes, of course I want my child to be challenged, and we're never gonna say no. So looking at that, out of the, I think it was 28 students that waived in, 26 of them are partially meeting or not meeting expectations on the graded MCAS. So now looking with my team, and I actually have a meeting on my agenda this week with my grade team, okay, what are some of the things now we have to do? I probably, as a principal, have to start that communication earlier with families around, hey, next year, there's potentially algebra. And some of the ideas that we have is maybe some summer work that students have to do in person. Also, just taking a look at our flex blocks and looking at some interventions for those students that have waived in to give them a little bit more support in the sense of what are some of those 8th grade skills that you lacked coming into the class. And then obviously supporting them in building that kind of spiraling along with the algebra class. Because right about now in November is really where the algebra class will really speed up for students. And then if we haven't met that criteria for that student to build that firm foundation to build upon, that's where I think we're seeing some of the gaps. So I'm just going to work with my teacher leaders, obviously work with our grade team, and just see what are some of the things that we can strategically do both in 8th grade, 7th, and 6th to support our students have a little bit more success here. So that's just kind of one of the stories that we've been looking into.
So clearly, math is an area of focus for us. So in the last 2 staff meetings, we dug into iReady data for one whole staff meeting, and then our last staff meeting was digging deeper into the MCAS data, which was looking at an item-by-item analysis. So the teachers could really look at, okay, were their strengths, where were they, and what do we need to work on? We're definitely, I mean, there are so many factors I feel that go into 4th graders taking an MCAS test because it's just very unusual. So the math is a focus, but also writing. We see our kids produce this amazing writing during the school year. When it comes to MCAS, just writing something in one session is a challenge. So we need to increase stamina. We need to increase more of those short writing sessions and getting them to answer a little bit more. We can look at every single student's answers to essays. And some of the stuff we noticed was the stamina and also answering just the first part of a question, not going on and answering the other parts of the question. For math, we really dug into math a lot. We were using Engage New York. We were using not the most updated Engage New York curriculum. We all agree that iReady is better. It's more aligned with the standards. It spirals. It has less lessons to get to in a year. Engage New York was 180 lessons in 180 days, and that's just not humanly possible as a teacher, sorry. And so iReady has that piece to it, as well as us, the professional development we're getting, and learning how to really dig into the iReady data, because we get so much information from that. So our teachers already have set up action plans, such as we want to try and get in 45 minutes a week of individual practice in geometry on iReady. Get that in. Geometry was a weakness. Numbers and operations was better, but still an area that needs to improve. They want to, we're meeting more to talk about math. We're looking at data more. They've already dug in and looked at each student's individual data, so we've already looked at all that. We already have students in intervention groups. We already have, the teachers already have tier 2 groups in their classrooms that they have created to give some extra support to, whether it's reading, writing, or math. So I have a whole list of action plans that we are putting in. I just think it's the digging in piece, I think that was really helpful, because when looking at those item by item and being able to actually, if it was an item that was a released item, when we could go in and see this is what it was asking and this is where we did not get that. 60% of the kids did not get that, is really helpful. So on the November 7th early release, we're continuing this work because you can't do it all in an hour and a half staff meeting. So we want to continue to dig into the math, and we want to look some more at the writing, the more around what our students actually wrote as their essays, and how they were scored. So that's where we are.
And at the Bresnahan, we have the great responsibility of starting students off with their first MCAS experience. So I'm happy to hear what my colleagues are saying. Their plans are looking at the data with their staff. It's very similar, even at the earliest level at the Bresnahan. We've had a lot of changes over the past couple years at the Bresnahan. We have our foundations curriculum. So I anticipate as the students continue to move up through the Bresnahan, by the time that they're taking their 3rd grade MCAS, we'll start to be seeing some more strengths in literacy based on that curriculum alone and the amazing work that the teachers are doing. And we are also very excited to have MyView, but also iReady for math. We started the diagnostic testing last year, and now we have the curriculum to go along with it. As Theo mentioned in the student report, we just sent out our early literacy scores to parents, and we're doing the DIBELS test that goes along with foundations to give us a snapshot of where the students are. We're doing that 3 times a year, and we're looking at that data and creating intervention groups. Those intervention groups are already up and running, and they'll continue to shift and change based on student need throughout the year. And we're also doing that with the iReady test. On top of math and literacy on the MCAS test, we also are teaching students how to use their Chromebooks for school. If you've ever watched a group of first graders try to log on to their Chromebooks as a whole, it's very fascinating. But by the time they're in 3rd grade, they're pretty good at it. But we have our technology integrator, Stacey Boucher, who is pushing into the classroom more and more, and she'll be starting to embed those skills a little bit earlier for our students, so by the time they are taking the test, that will hopefully be less of a challenge, because that is, the reality is that's the first time they're taking that kind of test on a computer. And our teachers are also just trying to wrap around with executive functioning skills, just social, emotional, the whole package to support the kids so that they're ready to take the test.
Maybe on a future, data check-in, whether that be mid-year or whatever we have to do next, it'd be nice to include the iReady piece back to so you can see both. So if it's telling the same story, because I do think the iReady will give you a little bit more of a deep dive into it, and if it's matching up with what we're seeing on MCAS, and maybe just seeing how we're hitting that.
Yeah, we're presenting, I think November we scheduled for the
next meeting we
correct.
planned for, we decided it might be too much to put into the one meeting. So beginning of your data for iReady will be at the next meeting.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then I think the other piece too, is, although iReady is teaching the similar standards, iReady is more more individually based for kids. It really provides information for the teachers that change instruction during the day versus a standardized test. So it's not necessarily a student, for example, if you're looking at an MCAS test setting as, Ms. Rossi and Ms. Sokolowski, and even middle school, when the students are working with iReady, they're with their teacher in a comfortable zone, understand the standards, and they've had practice. So I think that type of an assessment is excellent to give the teachers information on how to change the instruction. But I do think there's that element of a standardized test. So that same third grader, fourth grader, fifth grader that had maybe success in iReady may not translate necessarily to the MCAS. It's a whole different test. It's a whole different atmosphere. But we should see correlations regarding the standards with teachers.
Right.
So
I'm more thinking of benchmarking and not so much the week to week.
Yeah, it shouldn't be.
Right.
But like for our teachers, for example, like if they're, let's say we go back to Mr. Marcos and Ms. Rossi, let's say they're looking item analysis, right? And there's certain standards that we may not be hitting, or the students may not have done well a certain standard on the MCAS test. The iReady program will provide teachers with individualized assignments that will address those standards. So that's where it's like your MCAS test is the year before, and as they move forward, this information with the iReady provides the teacher that ongoing assessment, learning right in front of them. So we should see some similarities, but it's not going to be apples to apples, kind of what I'm saying. So.
Do we have any other questions? Yes, Ms. Higgins?
Sorry. I just wanted to thank you for putting together this data report for all families and for the whole community. I know this was a lot of work, it's 19 pages worth of work, but this is so important for everyone to understand where we are, what our challenge areas are, what our achievement is, where are we succeeding. I think the accountability percentiles at the NOC in the high school particularly, I mean, that's really significant growth, so something to be really proud of, and it's something that I'm certainly excited about. Students with disabilities in here is really promising, and so the growth I think is huge. That's exactly what you want to see is in the 50s to help them catch up to their peers. I do think it is important just to call out the scaled scores in here that you're seeing the meeting and exceeding levels are still far below their peers. We're looking at 20 to 30% meeting expectations, which for those students and those families doesn't feel good. So the growth is still there, but still a little bit more to do. And then the, excuse me, I have a comment and a question. One comment is thank you for each of you going through kind of your focus areas for the year. It was really helpful to hear all of that. One thing to maybe think about, and maybe you're already doing this and it's not something that popped up to the top of your mind, is I heard a lot about digging into the data really deeply, the item level analysis, which is really important, more support blocks, intervention for kids. I want you to just think about what does the pedagogy look like in the classroom and how can pedagogy be supported that potentially can support students' conceptual understanding over memorization, because that's where we want to get kids to, is conceptual understanding, and that's going to show up in MCAS rather than just memorizing the answers that will sort of get us there. So what does that pedagogy look like? Is it more academic discourse for kids? Is it more opportunities for them to be problem solving? Is it checks for understanding in the classroom so the teachers know earlier if kids didn't get something? And I'm sure you're working on all those things. That's just not something that any of you had stated up front. And then my question for you, Superintendent, is what are you thinking about for small group tutoring? There are grants available from the state for increased small group tutoring. I heard Mr. Wolf say that's something that he was going to be looking into, but outside of even the intervention blocks, what does small group tutoring look like in Newburyport?
Yeah, I think, a couple of things. I think the pedagogy has been vital. We've been talking about skills-based instruction. We've been running different cohorts of that, and so we really work with our principals and our teachers on kind of what that looks like, creating rubrics, formative assessments, frequent feedback. We have the 5 best instructional strategies that we stress. So a lot of that a lot of that work is really just changing the instruction that's happening in the classroom. So I just think overall, part of our goal when I first got here was the resources for our teachers, right? There wasn't a lot of resources for teachers, so as we're asking them to change or to try to modify the instructional practices that are in their classroom, they were also trying to find resources at the time. They were trying to find, how's it tied to the standards. So part of our work is really taking that away in the sense of providing our teachers with research-based curriculum, so they're not having to research and go find what standards they're teaching, and really allowing them to focus on the instructional practice. So, the station rotation, the scaffolding that happens in the classes, the ongoing, as we said, assessment from the formative to the summative, the feedback that's happening ongoing. So I think that's a lot of the work that we've done. I would say before COVID, we had a big push for the skills-based instruction with Billy Donegan. We had multiple cohorts go through. And then one of the aspects of COVID was it almost disrupted practice, right? We had to have the kids sitting in rows, facing forward, spaced apart. It was, for 2 years, no collaboration. So the last couple of years, we're bringing that back. So I'm really happy that there's been a big push and a big focus for pedagogy. And what's also really impressive is our teachers' openness to try new things and to take a risk. And that's for our principals that allow them to do that, to try things. So that's one aspect of the instructional practice. I think the second piece is, and I can have, I think Jamie Sokolowski and Tara, Ms. Rossi, these principals behind us think outside the box. So I understand that for their flex time, for the after-school 1 hour extra help, that they've really coordinated and organized that. So we are running interventions and opportunities for all kids. So it's really kind of thinking outside the box of the teacher's day. I keep hitting everything, sorry, but really looking at the contract, the teacher's time, the teacher's hours, and then taking a look at that within the school day and then also after school. And how can we structure that so all students have the opportunity for the extra help? So I'm not sure if you guys want to talk about that, but I know you did a lot of great work there. Take some credit while you have an opportunity.
So you've heard me talk about our Clipper courses before, but the teachers have that additional hour with students built into their contract. So at the Bresnahan, we call them Clipper courses, and it's an hour after school. It's open to all Bresnahan students. Some of the courses that are offered are play-based, because we also, get questions from parents about extra recess or not a more play opportunity, how to get them moving more. So we do have some active clubs, basketball, running, outdoor play, and then we do have some intervention blocks. So some students come to extra reading groups. We have some teachers do invitation-only courses for students that they identify as specific needs. So we do have a pretty robust after-school program happening that's both a mix of fun and social play, and then also intervention and honing in on some academic needs that we are working on during the school day, but also providing some time after school.
Thank you. Before you walk away, just wanted to say I'm really impressed with the 60% meeting or exceeding in grade 3 ELA. I mean, across the state, that's like a huge area of decline. That grade 3 is somewhere that we're really worried about, because those were our earliest learners during COVID and missed so much core instruction. And so 60% is really huge. So kudos to your staff.
Thank you so much.
What we're doing is similar to the Bres in terms of after-school hours, but I forgot to mention during the day was we have increased intervention blocks for specific students. I mean, so last year there might have been a student or a small group that was seen twice a week. We're trying to get them 3 to 4 times a week, so that the reality is you do need more intervention time. There are a lot of students that need intervention in both areas. So the schedule is really packed. We've also, a lot of the teachers have put in place wing blocks, what I need blocks, so that there's not just time for them putting in some extra support, but also some enrichment. And I think that is also part of our after school. So the after school is also, it's academic, but there's also a piece of what are those kids that are really thriving in science and math, and let's get them to a STEM group. So really trying to focus it a little bit more on the needs of the kids, because they're all very different.
I love talking. That's why I'm giving 2 presentations tonight. I just think, just to go back to the, teacher pedagogy, just essentially teacher effectiveness. I think that's the great thing. I've worked in a lot of districts, and I have never worked at a district that's as healthy as a culture as here. So when you go in and you give a teacher feedback, you're able to just have a meeting with them. It's, in a lot of districts, it's very high. I'm meeting with the principal. I'm meeting with my evaluator. And I think we just created just a great sense of, belonging with our teachers as well. And this is open door policy. So I think that's really where the magic happens now, is really giving that feedback. Hey, have you thought about it? You'll see, at least for the NOC, I can speak, our 3 people that evaluate, we're in there with pulses, and we just think, hey, have you thought about doing it this way? Have you thought about engaging students in a different way? And usually, 90% of the time, faculty will come down and say, hey, yeah, what I have done, this is actually part of my follow-up lesson, or I haven't thought of that, I'm going to try it, do you mind coming back in tomorrow? So I think that's really where all the magic happens, with the explicit instruction.
You want to talk? Add more trouble?
Yeah, sure, definitely. I'm always getting in trouble, I guess. But and just to kind of response to the question, obviously high quality instruction is everything. But then also at the same time recognizing that sometimes the best way to support that in the classroom is getting teachers to see it. So at the high school, we've already kind of ran through 2 sets of instructional rounds, but really looking for examples of that high quality practices that help students get to that conceptual understanding. And then also working with Nick, we're going to be taking a team just to check out grade 7, because they definitely have some special things going on there for a couple of years in a row, some just really great results and some consistency there. So it's important for us to really see what is happening there, and then what we can take away and try to provide some feedback with our own teachers up at the high school.
Yeah, and I think that ties into the culture, because I've had the opportunity to work with our teachers for the skills-based. Ms. Furlong is working with, I think, 40-something teachers on classroom management. So I think when we work with our teachers, we're all educators at that point, and we're problem solvers. So it's not, I have 28 years experience, this is how I did it, it should go this way. We actually work well in the sense of when we're in that professional development. Obviously, we facilitate the conversation, but I think, have allowed the teachers to speak freely and let us know what the real challenges are. And then some of the challenges that are shared, we have an opportunity to brainstorm with them as fellow educators. And I think that's been really successful for us. And I really believe, credit our principals, extended leadership team, our teacher leaders, that some districts offer a lot of professional development and no one takes advantage of it. But I think of the way in Newburyport, how we're in this together, and it's been really beneficial, where a lot of teachers taking advantage of the opportunities. So, thanks. Any other questions?
Ms. Walker?
Yeah, I just had a question and more on presenting the data, because I know that last year we talked a little bit about the fact that the MCAS test changed, so showing historical comparison is a little bit problematic because of the way the test is now given, and I get that. But I do like having at least some context, and I think the state is a big net to compare to.
Right.
So, and I know that DESE has the groups that we compare to that they've pre-selected, but I would challenge the staff to think about communities or districts that we would typically compare ourselves to, from all the things that you know about our district, demographics, financial stability, population size, and the individual challenges we have, like the EL students and other things. So I'm not asking you for an answer to this tonight, but I would challenge you,
Down the
like,
road.
going forward, particularly with MCAS, because it's used statewide, whereas with iReady, not every school district uses it, so forth. But just thinking about how we can sort of show in context, how are we doing it? Maybe it's there are subcategories that you're comparing to, not the whole district as a whole.
Open to all suggestions. Yes.
Just a comment. I've survived a number of these MCAS presentations over the years, and I want to say that at least, getting the document beforehand and the way that the document is laid out, I found it personally very coherent and very transparent, and I think that is given that this is the first time we've seen a document like this, if that's your baseline, then I'm, kind of, maybe I'll do a write-in campaign this November. But I think that it's going to be very exciting.
Yeah, and I think I just want to credit our school committee because that summer retreat I think was really helpful, where we had an opportunity to talk through a lot of different aspects of the year. And I think that resonated, Mr. Callahan, when we are presenting 62 slides of data, it's like if you're a parent and watching, or, school committee and us, we might have a full understanding. But we really took a step back. I want to credit, Lisa Furlong and our central office team of really taking a very complex aspect of today's education in Massachusetts and try to simplify it to the point where people can digest it and understand it. So, yeah, and I think as we have that foundation, and as you know, I always take your feedback back to the table, and we can always make improvements. So, thank you.
Thank you. Great. Mr. Marcos, stay here.
Yep. Yes. Don't jump in your car and start driving away.
He did kind of look like he wanted to get out of here, didn't he?
So I think we're all set for that, yes? And okay.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll introduce this.
That was the best we've ever had.
So I just wanted to also take another opportunity. We've been discussing a lot of leadership opportunities in the college career pathway program at the high school. And I know as Portrait of a Graduate, it's a pre-K to 12 vision. So part of the student leadership throughout the district has been essential for us. Bringing students to the table, having students' voice has been really, really an important aspect of our strategic plan. Mr. Marcos, at the same time as Mr. Wolf, they collaborate about student leadership. And I just want to credit Mr. Marcos, the program that he brought in to train our student leaders at the middle school was just really impressive. And I just said, hey, can you present and just talk about that leadership summit you have with your middle school students, and then really how it ties directly into the leadership work at the high school. So, there you go. Thanks.
You're welcome.
So basically every summer, you kind of sit back, you digest the year, and you try to map out the rest of the year, because once September hits, you don't really have time to do anything else. So hopefully you had a good productive summer. And so as I was thinking about ways to raise student voices, obviously it's a big initiative for all of us. Reached out to about 15 to 20 kind of motivational speakers, teen speakers, school speakers, and J.C. Poole really stood out because he was the only one that offered more than just an assembly. So working with J.C., he was able to come up with essentially a 2-hour leadership summit, and it was great that we were able to bring J.C. in the night before with our partnership with NYS, so families got to also see pretty much an identical message, which was really cool. And I think it's the first time that's kind of happened where speakers come in, at least since I've been here. So it was really just nice, and essentially I woke up to about a handful of parent emails saying, oh my God, I'm really excited for my child to see this. How they could become a part of the Leadership Summit. I was like, I wish I could bring all 500 kids to the Leadership Summit. But nevertheless, it was a really positive experience for our students. So one of the leading messages that JC had, and really it was really just around building resiliency and dealing with adversity. And we know that even as adults, I can speak for myself, like, I have a challenge dealing with adversity sometimes. Like, you beat yourself up, you're very critical. So think about a 12, 13, or 14-year-old kid getting that MCAS letter or an iReady letter or a grade or dealing with a friend or dealing with, whatever else is going on in their, preteen and teen lives. So one of the great things that JC said to the students, and, he brought like a dog tag, and he said, whoever can answer this question, is going to get my dog tag with a TT of Teen Truth, and says, if you aren't doing something, what are you doing? And we got an array of answers, and then one student raised her hand in the second row and says, well, if you're not doing something, you're doing nothing. And he was like, yes, exactly. And that's where it really started to spark the excitement in the crowd, and I think with our students, and also talking to our student leaders afterwards, it was, don't just sit back. And that goes in so many ways. It aligns with what we're doing at the middle school, and obviously what they're aligning at the high school from our student-led conversations. Like, you got to know your data, kid. Like, you got to know what your MCAS data means. You got to know what your iReady data is. You got to know what you're academically. And it's not to add pressure to you. We know that that comes along with it, but it's more so to just for you to understand yourself as a learner. Where am I now in 6th grade? Where am I going to be in 10th, 11th, and 12th? And that's really some of the things that JC was able to harp on, not just in the whole school assembly, but also with our leadership summit. So these were essentially our 3 goals for the day. Essentially just brainstorming, things that are impacting students. A thumbs up from my man Quentin over there. So brainstorming critical issues that are impacting and affecting students. And these 45 students, we invited them and we gave them a task. Before you come into the summit, talk to your friends, talk to the kids you want friends with, talk to your acquaintances, talk to some kids that maybe you don't, consider yourself even acquaintances, and get to know what's impacting them both in and out of school. And then the great part of it was the last, kind of the last hour where we're able to develop, real life solutions. And the kids came up with some really cool stuff. Like one of the things that, I'll just highlight a couple of things. So there were 2 things that really came out of things that are critical issues in a child's life in the middle school. And number 1 was time management. And the other one was pressure. And as we started to dive deeper into the time management, okay, what's going on? Well, I don't have time to do anything. Okay, so then we're not just, we're not going to just, we take the word of a 13-year-old, but we're also going to push back a little bit. What do you mean? What are you doing after school? Well, I leave school, I go downtown. Okay. What do you do downtown? I hang out till 4:30, 5 o'clock. Okay, great. Here, have some time with a friend. That's healthy. Awesome. So what are you doing at 5? Well, I go have a snack. Okay, great. What are you doing after? I'm going to practice. All right, what time do you come home for practice? I don't know, 7:38. Okay, great. What are you doing at 8 o'clock? Take a shower, eat dinner. And I said, where is some homework time or some reading time? Well, we do that kind of last half an hour, and sometimes I fall asleep with the book on my chest. I'm like, okay, we need to talk about time management from your perspective, right? So one of the things that came out of it as a long-term solution, it sounds like many of our lives, right? So one of the things that came out of that was, how do we incorporate some time management workshops during our flex block? So we're going to follow up with our student leaders. We have about 16 action steps, and knowing that that's probably too much for us to handle, we're going to work with them to pick up 3 or 4 of them and really commit to them for the rest of the year. And some will be, student-led, some will be teacher-led, some will be admin-led, but we really want to just take that next step in the sense of what are some of the things we're going to commit to and to support them. And these are just some of the activities that we did. A lot of it was just circling up. So one of the first activities was, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but just the first activity was interesting. So he would say, okay, have the kids, stand up, and he said, hey, get into a group of 10. And then the kids would, maneuver. And all of a sudden, the first group, there was 45 kids, and 5 kids were out of a group. And they went off the stage. He goes, okay, guys, go off the side. Okay, get into a group of 9, get into a group of 7, get into a 4, go back to a group of 10. And eventually, there was nobody left. And he goes, how did it feel to be pushed out of a group? How did it feel to leave a group? How did it feel to get, literally elbowed out of a group? And again, and that's where it really went back to that sense of belonging, that everybody's voice is valued. And I think that's really was a nice kind of kickoff right after the assembly, getting into that circle of activity. He says he has done it with adults, and he has had bloody noses for folks that were very competitive. So we didn't do that, which was good. So essentially, one of the things that really, resonated with all the admin. It was myself, Katie Parks, my assistant principal, and Tori Lane, who's one of our special ed teachers, who's leading student council with us. These are just some of the highlights. And, when we look at our slogan this year as a district, and I think it's been our mantra, for a very, very long time, is the sense of belonging. And, JC said it best. And these are his words, not mine. I told him I would, use it. And he said, at the end of the day, what we need above all is love. Because at the end of the day, he always says, love always wins. So when you sit back and you watch an injustice, when you sit back and you see a kid getting picked on, when you sit back and you're just kind of lazy, you got to act upon that. And don't be that kid doing nothing. And I think that's really the challenging piece at middle school. You're watching your friend do something. You know it's not right. How do you build the courage and the bravery to say, hey, don't do that? That's a really hard conversation at that age. But I think this is where we're really trying to go here, and this is the work that we do on a daily basis. And if you look in the back, that was kind of the backdrop for everything as far as act with compassion today. And I see the kids, even, it's a week later, but often, we don't remember what we did yesterday. And sometimes, I'll go up to the kids and say, hey, how are we going to act with compassion? When? Today. So it's kind of been good for our student leaders to kind of continue to go through that. And again, we're just trying to build relationships, build student voice, and then continue to create this sense of belonging. And those next steps are essentially working with our student leaders. Over the next week, we'll be meeting with student council again. I think it's the November 1st or 2nd, Thursday after Wednesday or Thursday after school, and then building upon those action steps and picking 3 or 4 of those things that we can really follow throughout the rest of the year, and continue to listen to them and lean on them and work with our teachers to create a better community here at the NOC and throughout the school. And I think that's it.
Any questions?
Any questions?
You're taking on a different role 2 years ago.
After the kids went through this, just purely anecdotally, was there a buzz in the school? Were kids talking to each other? What did you see?
Absolutely. I think that's like I said, I wish I could have brought all 500 students to go through this. But you got a sense just the next day, the kids that were selected, it's kind of like tonight, right? Like these kids being recognized, that's going to lift their spirits, right? And I think the same exact thing. And we had some students that I don't think you would consider, oh, wow, that's a leader. So we brought a very diverse group of students in the sense of, we brought kids who are a little edgy. We brought kids who have students with disabilities. We brought kids on 504s. We brought kids who push the envelope in the classroom. We brought kids who are late to school. We bring kids who are quiet. We brought kids who don't have a voice yet. And just to see that, I'm in the crosswalk every day, and I would say 5 to 10 of the students that were at that leadership summit never said hello to me. Hey, how you doing? Good morning. Hey, have a great day. And they walk right by me. And now today, they say hi to me ever since that summit. So just from that,
It's progress.
absolutely, just to see that that they know that someone's watching over them, someone cares about them, and that they matter. I mean, if we just can change one of those 45 kids, that was a huge win for us. And JC and I have gone back and forth over the past couple of days, and there's a potential to do a round 2 with that same group of students to dig a little bit deeper into some of the issues that they brought up and do more of the conversation around resiliency and adversity that we weren't able to.
Thank you. That sounds wonderful. Any other questions, comments? Thank you so much, Mr.
And
Marcos.
Mr. Wolf has about a 15-minute head start. We live in the same community, so we typically race after school.
All right, you are free to go at this time.
I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Okay, I'm not sure if we have any subcommittee updates. Anything for finance, Mr. Callahan?
Yes, we met, and now I'm forgetting the date, 12th, and we went over, I just sent to the committee members who were not there, we went over the fiscal year 23 recap as of October 11, so you guys have questions about that. And one thing that Phil Littlehill was saying that he's been unwinding decades of multiple versions of spreadsheets and Munis and QuickBooks and all these things and putting it into one. So now that when we see the budget, you can see every line item easily. The last part of that is going to be athletics, which is incredibly naughty. Knotty.
I was writing it down.
And so one thing, there were surprise guests, Andy Wolf and Kyle Hodson, the AD, were there. So we talked about how starting next week, Ms. Walker and I are doing the subcommittee for fundraising, which will include people from the boosters, NEF, PTO, and a handful of other administrators from the district. One thing that was mentioned, and Ms. Hall, Mr. Cole can correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm paraphrasing, that the athletics fundraising is used by coaches who choose to go above whatever the department decides is the most basic for a sport to be able to be run. And that doesn't sit well with me because that means you're relying on parents to, fund your program, which is just not right. So hopefully we get to go really deep into that during these meetings. There'll be 5 of them, October to March, and we'll find out how to fix it. The others can voice their opinions on that as well if they'd like, but that is my definite thing. I don't like it, and that's what I presumed was happening, and I would like to see it fixed. And that's my report.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing from Steve or Sarah? No? Okay.
No, I appreciate you taking that on with the advisory. I think that's gonna be really helpful. It was, it was clear from that last meeting that we don't have consistency. The coaches we've talked about the fact that they're underpaid, and it seems like one of the things that can come out of this is some kind of training for coaches so that there's a consistency in how they're doing fundraising, when they're doing fundraising, why they're doing fundraising, because we don't have that right now. Yeah. Mr. Cole, did you want to say?
I just wanted to add that I think if everybody can focus in on the importance of athletics as part of a balanced school program, academics, arts, athletics, that may help put fundraising where it needs to be, and it also may help building leaders at the school level make sure that, the sports are budgeted completely so that we're not fundraising for essentials and one coach doesn't have it in their mind that they have to do dollars and cents more for their sport than another sport, because in reality it's how that team comes together, how that coach comes together. And I think that we have a lot to be thankful for from an athletic perspective, in that Newburyport High School has won the Dalton Award 3 straight years. That's pretty much unheard of. I don't want to say it's unprecedented because I don't know that, but I think you already have the foundation to build from to have a more, if you will, equitable program that, again, the balance, academics, arts, athletics, make sure you provide the essentials so that you can succeed in all of them.
And one thing, I did send a website form submission to the Gridiron people, but there's no names on that website. So if anybody actually knows someone who's on the Gridiron personally, can you call them and have them contact me? Because I would like them to be at the meetings if they want on the bat phone. If they're willing to be there, that'd be great. Hopefully they say yes, at least to 1 or 2 of the meetings. That'd be good. Thank you.
Great. Ms. Walker.
No, we have not met, but we do have a meeting next Monday to go over the next section, which I believe is. So we have another meeting, so we'll hopefully have at least section I for the school committee coming up at a your future meeting, and then whatever the next sections that we get through, we'll try to get through as quickly as we can.
Great. So do you anticipate any first reading for our next meeting, or will that be a little further out?
I think we could do first reading for I just have to pull it together.
Okay. Right. That sounds good. Thank you. Superintendent's report.
Yeah, I just have just one item. We did our first safety drill working with our emergency personnel Saturday, and it was wonderful. So the police department, the fire department, EMTs, other rescue personnel. They had professional development where they went through different scenarios of active shooter. As a kind of collective, there was a great dialogue where the schools, myself, and all were talking about reunification and all the really important aspects around school safety. And then in the afternoon, after the presentation and our dialogue, they ran through different scenarios in the high school. The feedback that I received from the police department, fire department, the EMTs, the emergency personnel, it was wonderful. They were very appreciative of the partnership, and we're going to continue the dialogue to fine-tune a lot of, when you plan for the worst. So we plan on offering, the other buildings. The aspect for the police and fire is a lot of their personnel are off-duty, so they're paying overtime. But I really believe it will be worth continued training in the different schools. I mean, one of the benefits for our emergency personnel is they had the opportunity to walk through the high school to get a good sense of where everything is. And it was just a, I always talk about Newburyport community, everyone pulling together. School safety, this was just one of the best meetings and trainings I've had in Newburyport. We're all on the same page with the number one priority is the safety of our students and families and trying to prepare for the worst. So it was great. I want to thank, as I said, our police, our fire, our EMTs, emergency personnel that were all involved in that. It was just a wonderful training for them, and it was good for us to be part of the day. So that's it.
Okay, any new business? Go ahead.
I wanted to just do a quick report back. At the last committee meeting, we asked if somebody, a representative, which was myself, to go in front of some other bodies of the city about the safety issues raised by parents and families, which I know all of us have been aware of related to getting to and from school, but specifically the crosswalk safety. So I attended the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee meeting a few weeks ago, which is comprised mostly of staff and a few counselors, and was able to share primarily the issues that have been sent to us via email and also shared by the PTO president at the last meeting, and have had a good response from staff. I think there's there's some immediate concerns around lack of crossing guards, which we've talked about, and we are apparently fully staffed for the crossing guards, but at the same time, some of the locations where the rectangular rapid flashing beacons are being utilized are not staffed with crossing guards, and I think that transition is a little bit challenging, particularly for kids who aren't tall enough for vehicles to see them well. So relying on those rapid flashing beacons can be, I think, challenging. So thinking of solutions for maybe getting some more crossing guards would be great. Anyway, the dialogue is continuing. I'm going to have a follow-up meeting with members of the staff, DPS director, and there was also some conversation around police involvement, public safety involvement, either with supporting the crossing guards or maybe potentially staffing the crossing guards, training crossing guards. It is challenging for police to get out and do extra enforcement. As always, public safety folks are stretched, and asking police to go to every single crosswalk every single day doesn't make sense. But I have to be honest, I think targeted enforcement would be great. There's unfortunately many of the people who are speeding around school times are people trying to get to school, and that can be parents and students. And oftentimes a little extra enforcement is all they need to just remind them that, slowing down, it's not worth risking someone's safety to get to school, that kind of thing. So I think there's ongoing conversations that can be had. I think we should talk more about this during the budget process as well, and what we can do to support or figure out innovative ways to support crossing safety particularly. It was so great to see the participation around the Safe Routes to School, the Walking Back to School Day enthusiasm. There's a lot of interest. I think parents would like, and families would like to be walking more and biking more, and so if we can, any way we can be collaborative and support that would be great.
Great. Thank you for following up on that.
Sure.
I did just want to mention that our next meeting, November 6th, will be at the high school in the library because it's the night before the election and this space is not available. Anyone else have any new business? Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.